Hello, 3D animation class. It's week 4, and today we're continuing to animate a character. Just a couple of housekeeping bits. Let me turn my volume up a little bit, maybe, test. Next week was supposed to be a Zoom night, but hopefully you got the memo and you've looked at the course schedule that I will have to cancel next week's Zoom. You will still have your character animation assignment due that day, and I will provide a short video feedback for everybody on their assignment, which also reminds me I need to grade everybody's first assignment. Hopefully that will have happened soon. Additionally, the following week, which will be, I believe, October 3, I'll do an optional office hour Zoom, so you can get your questions in and give me a chit chat if you wish. Okay. So today, I want to, I know I already talked about armatures and things like that, but I want to revisit that for a final time to show you how to create. So like I did the worm example, and then I showed you using the Rigify kind of pre-populated bone example. But I just want to give one more example of how you can use an armature. Perhaps if your character is not a humanoid or a quadruped, or or like you can use it for other purposes as well. So I just want to kind of close the loop on like what armatures can do for animation, and just like some additional controls that you can use should you be using not a normal character model for your parkour assignment. And then, time pending and effort pending, I'll just continue to work on my example a little bit. So, this is where I left it last week. Doing a flip, doing a couple of things, not bad. I'm actually like generally pretty pleased with how this looks, having, not a ton of keyframes. So I'm actually going to save this as it is, and I'm going to create a new, actually I should save as, because this is, I should call this like, character animation. Save as. And also, maybe I'll do like another final reminder on rendering, and I'll talk about rendering an image sequence as well, because I believe I didn't quite cover it for your first assignment. So I'll also talk about image sequence here. So let me just do a new file real quick. New general file like this, and why don't I just do like a super duper basic model of like the weirdest character you've ever seen, and maybe I'll pause while I do this, because the me modeling it is not relevant to this class. All right, here you go. I actually took this from a thing that I had made in the modeling class. Okay, so just like super duper basic mesh. Let me just add another loop cut here just for good measure. Okay. And I'm going to do visual geometry to mesh so that all of my modifiers are applied. I'm going to go Shift A, or not Shift A, Control A, and apply visual geometry to mesh. So now all of my things are here like that. Okay, here's my character. And I'm also going to, let's see. One thing I want to do is grab all these and just go GZ like that, so that my person is standing like that and the origin point is on the ground. Okay, now creating an armature for a character. So obviously, like, use the things that are available to you. And actually, this seems like pretty giant, so I'm actually going to scale this down a little bit like this too, and also do another Control A like this. Nope, Control A, all transforms. There we go. So the scale is 1. So if you go Shift A and you've got the Rigify thing turned on, you've got some armature kind of pre-built things. Animals: bird, cat, horse, shark, wolf, basic, human, quadruped, whatever. Animals. What does the bird one look like? It's teeny tiny. Well, I guess, birds are small. Yeah, cool. Look at that. Maybe you want to make a bird. I've actually never looked at these. What other animals? Horse. Wow. Yeah, cool. Yeah, look, it's got like little spikies for the head. That's cool. Anyway, so this is not the perfect example because like this is a human and I would just use one of the human things. But let's say, for example, you have a different kind of thing that is not on the list, but you still want to be able to like control the tentacles or the whatever. You would want to create your own armature. So let's walk through how I do that. Let's say that I have a weird thing here and I need to make an armature for it. So start with a bone. Shift A, armature, single bone. And again, it's important to keep things centered. So like, and also it's important to label things too. It can be really helpful as you're doing your deformation and stuff like that if things are labeled. So I'm going to GZ move this up, and I'm going to do my viewport display in front because I find that to be very helpful. And rather than scaling this down, I want to make sure I go into edit mode first because I just always think it's important to keep your scale at 1. So I'm going to GZ. So starting with the spine, I'm going to start by naming this bone, this bone is going to be spine 1. So, or spine, 0, 1, something like that. And actually, yeah, that's fine. And so then I'll go E to extrude and Z like this, and I'll just do like a couple of spine bits because, the accuracy of this is not as important as the methods I'm showing you. So spine 1 and like this is spine 101. So I'll probably right now just relabel these spine 02, spine 03, spine 04 like this. Okay, now let's see. If I do this, let's see. So okay, here we go. Let's do the next bit. So you can have like bones. So like this is a chain of bones. So when we talked about that, like a chain of bones is like a set of bones that are connected that, kind of impact each other. So for example, if you're doing inverse kinematics, like the chain like would start here, like this. Oh, I should turn on my key and stroke thing. Here it is. Let's go up here. This is the end of the chain. This is the beginning of the chain. So like if you were to bend the spine using inverse kinematics, it would bend all the way down to kind of the hips like this. Same thing with the arms. Like you would have a chain of bones that goes with the arms. But there are like times that you would want to stop. And so like the human body, all the bones are connected, but like you have lots of bones that do the connecting. And in an armature, there's not necessarily a reason to do every single bone, which is why, they have like simpler versions. So like, and it also depends on how you're using it. So for example, actually, I'm jumping all over the place today here. Let me go back into object mode. But if we go Shift A and we look at the Metafy or Rigify human, like the actual human, look at all the controls that are on here. So like, the arms are pretty simple, but like, look at all the face controls. Like there's even like all these little eye things and like lips and chin and ears and stuff like that. So you need bones based on what you need to move, like all the individual fingers and such. I'm gonna delete that right now. So anyway, just as in the basic human here, not everything is connected, like this, this is not connected to another bone, but it is like parented. So you can see there's these little black lines that kind of keep things moving together. Like here, like the shoulder is actually disconnected from this. This bone is actually all like not connected to anything, but you can kind of have them move together using parenting. So I'm gonna delete that and just show you how to do it. So, let's click on this armature again and tab to edit. And so while you're editing, you can Shift A to add a bone and put it down here in the origin point. So you can G and rotate this a little bit. So just for example, like let's say this is going to be the start of, you know, a chain of bones for the arm like this. And so I'm going to be careful, or I'm going to be very conscious to label these as I go. So, here's where the naming gets even more important. And you need to label things left versus right. Because some of the automation, or some of the things like it can do automatically, like moving things with symmetry, like this thing up here, and also copying poses inverse, depend on labeling it this way. So because it really depends, or you really can choose, but I'm going to label this as the left because this is the left side of the character, not because it's the left side of the way I'm looking at it. Like, actually, you know, hopefully you get it. So I'm going to label this arm01.l. So .l is the key there. It has to end in .l. So you can do whatever you want, but as long as it's .l. So then I'm going to select the end of this. I'm going to go E to extrude, and, you know, whatever, like elbow. Pretend I'm actually being careful about this. Okay, so here's my chain of bones. This is arm01.l. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to rename these, like right now. This one is going to be arm, it's hard to see when that's in the way, arm02.l. And actually, you know what? Here, let me test this a little bit. So let me just, for now, let me label these, because actually I think there's a way to automatically label things. If I go arm 02, 03, 04, and 05. Let's see this. There might be a way, like if I select all these, armature, names, aha, auto name left, right. Yeah, okay, so it did it. Oops, and I didn't have them all selected. So actually, you can label, you can do them all like without the .l, and then select all the ones on the left or on the whichever, and go to the armature menu and do names and do auto name left, right. Oh, that's cool. Okay, so actually, I'm gonna wait to do that until I do the leg too. So the final step is like, so when a person bends forward, when the spine bends, the arm is gonna like move with it. The shoulder's gonna move with it. So you need to parent this bone to this thing, or to like the top of the spine, I suppose. So it's actually really simple. So with arm01 selected, in the bone menu here, there is relations. There's this relations drop down, and you can select that this bone is related to spine 04, which would be the top one. So you can see that now it drew this little black dotted line. So for example, let me just follow this along the path. So we're going to parent the mesh to this armature deform with automatic weights like this. And then I can select this, go into pose mode. And so now when I move this one here, we can see like that the arm is moving with it, you know, because this bone is parented to this bone. And then, you know, we can make all these adjustments as well. So if you see this is not doing inverse kinematics and all that stuff, but that's the relationship of the bone. Undo. There we go. I'm gonna undo the parent like that. Okay, cool. So let me just like real quick, let me go back to my front view. Let me do this. I'm gonna go tab for edit, and I'm gonna go Shift A to add a bone. And this is gonna be, you know, leg. So this is, I'm gonna open this up. So instead of bone, this is gonna be, you know, leg 01. And then I'm gonna like extrude, you know, to the knee, and then here, and then, you know, another one like this. Again, I'm doing this very fast, not for efficacy, just for demonstration. And then I'm gonna take this one, and first I'm gonna twirl all these open, label them. So you can even just select them like this. This is gonna be leg 01. This is gonna be leg 02. This is leg 03. And then, you know, and it doesn't even have to be that. Like this could just be like foot, you know, doesn't matter. I'm going to select this one here, and I'm going to say your parent is going to be spine 01 like that. So, you know, it puts it here, which is a little awkward, but so actually, let me test this out. So we go like this, Control P, automatic weights. We go like this, pose mode. So that is interesting. I wouldn't want it to be parented there. So I wonder if that's why they do those little hip things. So rather than doing what I just did here, I'll show you something. So remove the parent. So you maybe noticed on the other one they had ones that went out like this. So you can extrude more than one bone from a joint like this. So this one would be like hip, just hip or something like that. You can move this here. And then you parent this one to this one. So you could say the parent of this one is going to be hip. So it just makes the connection there. And so now, if I go back in here, do the parenting, Control P, automatic weights. If I go to pose mode here like this, that's going to bend, but the leg won't move. You see? See what I'm saying? Okay, undo, 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 undo. Okay, there we go. Final thing I'll show you is what we can do then. So now let's edit. Sorry, tab to, oops, I don't want to edit the mesh. I want to edit the armature. Tab to edit. I'm going to do A to select all, and I'm going to go to armature, and let's try the name thing. Let's try the names and auto name left, right. Yeah, okay. So it must like detect like what side of the x-axis it's on. So we can see that it named all of these things. So we've got spine, you know, the spine 0, blah, 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 blah. There's all the, let me make this bigger. Arm, left, 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 hip, left, left, leg, you know, and then, you know, foot there. So label them all .L. And then what we can do, which is really handy, is we can go armature, and there's this button symmetrize. And so this is going to make a copy of everything that's .L and put it on the right and make them .R, symmetrize. And so now we've got a symmetrical thing with all the corresponding bones, except now all these ones, if you look here, this is arm 02.R, arm 3.R, this is hip.R. So obviously this only works if it's symmetrical, which is why I encourage you to try to have a symmetrical character, but maybe you don't. And then, so let's say, well, okay, Nolan, I'm making a custom like thing, a custom armature, but now how do I do like the rig controls? And I believe we talked about it a little bit, but it would be using these constraints, not physics. It would be constraints here. So, you know, it would be, no, how do we, oh, I'm still in edit mode. I think we go to pose mode like this. And then you go to bone constraints. Here it is. So, whoops, and I realize my face is now kind of in the way. I'll move this back here. Here in bone constraints. So you'd add a bone constraint on here, and you could say inverse kinematics. And instead of doing the whole chain, you know, because I think, you know, you'd create null objects. Whoops. Oh. Anyway, we could go back to object mode. We could create a new null or new empty, and you know, you could make it whatever, a circle, something like this. Scale it down. That wasn't very helpful. Move it here. There we go. And, you know, okay, so then we go. Target for IK is going to be this empty object like this. You can turn on, off, stretch, or something like that. So then when we move this, oops, so we didn't do the parenting. So here we go. Control that, Control P with automatic weights. And now when you move this, okay, but I have too much inverse kinematics turned on. So chain length, you'd set this to, so this, how many bones are here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you'd set this to be 5. And so then I believe, yeah, it would just move your arm like that. And so then, okay, so let's say you wanted to continue down this path. So you could say, what else? You'd maybe want to keep all of your things together. So we could say, just like a rig. You could go shift, with this selected, you could go shift A and add another empty, and you know, make this a circle on the ground and go RX90. Like, whoop, where'd you go? Huh? Shift A, empty, circle, RX90. I don't know why that did that. We could call this like, you know, root or something like that. And then you can parent this to this. Control P. Parent to object like this. And so like, you know, this can be here and this can be here. Well, but then you'd set these to follow that. So we could do bone. Let's see. How do we do this? This one would be parent local location. Ooh, how do we do this? Constraint, add object constraint, child of. I bet we could do it like this. Root. Like that. There we go. And so then this would still work like this. Let me know if you find a YouTube video of a better way to do this particular thing. And then let's see. Let me add another one here. So with this, let's see. Let's do another cube like this. So this would be like the hips. So let's see. Can we do inverse? How would we do inverse kinematics here? I'm trying to think. To get the knees to bend. You know what I'm talking about? You know how like you can move the torso and the hands would stay in place? You might have to get creative with these bone constraints. So I think, okay, so we have to go to pose mode. And then with this bone, we add a bone constraint to this one. And we say bone constraint inverse kinematics and say target track to this empty O1. And we could call this like hips. And then and I think you'd have to do the same to these ones. Bone constraint, right? Inverse kinematics to this one, hips. Oh. Oh. No, okay. And so then here we go. So then you create another one for the foot. So okay, here we're going. I'm just going full into this team. You know, this would be like the foot control here on the bottom. I'm just gonna move this, you know, to be like here, like this. And we got to go on here. We got to go to pose mode. We got to select the end of the chain here. Bound constraint, inverse kinematics. Target is empty 001. Okay. And then if I go hips like this, pose mode object. It's like. I think I got to do one more thing. I think I also need. Let me do it one more time. Shift D, move this over here. I understand this looks horrific, but I'm just trying to like do a proof of concept that you could create your own rig like this. Add bone constraint, inverse kinematics, pull target, empty 002. And then this one is going to be add bone constraint, inverse kinematics, object is going to be hips, like that. I don't know why the hips are like doing that thing, but let's just try it. No, this isn't quite it. Object mode. Object mode, pose mode. Yeah, we need to remove these ones. Remove that. Remove that. Remove that. Okay, let's see if this. I'm gonna try one more thing and then I'm gonna move on to my next thing. Okay. I want to go to pose mode, and I'm going to do on the bone constraint rather than, let's see, child of root. Let me remove that. We'll come to that later. Let me do a bone constraint here, and rather than IK, let's just do child of here. Let's do child of hips here like this. Let's do the same thing on here. Add bone constraint, child of the hips control, and then same thing here. Add bone constraint, child of hips like this. And then if we go back into object mode, Oh, there it is. Okay. That's working. So obviously if I had set this up a little bit better, but it is doing the thing I wanted. You can see that it's the IK is still working. Actually, this is kind of fun. So anyway, okay. There's that. You could repeat it for the other arm and such. So the moral of the story is, if you're doing a human, you're much better off just using Rigify or using one of the many plugins. Now, I will say, here's a prime example of a reason that I needed to make my own little custom armature and have some of those bone constraints. Let's actually see if I can find it. I don't have it, but I needed to. So with the company that I work for, my day job, one of the symbols of our organization is a bike, and so they had somebody make a really high detail model of a bike, just like a road bike, kind of photorealistic. But they didn't set it up to animate. So that was my job to I'm going to bring this into Blender. I'm going to do all the remeshing and remodeling and stuff. But then to animate, it was pretty simple because, bikes are all solid pieces, the wheel just turns, the handlebars just rotate, the pedals just do this. But there was if you can think about it, you maybe wouldn't think about it, but what is the thing that needs to bend on a bike when you ride it or steer it? It's the little wires that go to the brakes. So when you turn the handlebars, the wires or the brake wires are attached to the handles. And so they move with it in one spot, but then the other part is affixed to the bike. So the wires bend is basically what I said 3 times. So what I did, it was I made a little chain of bones that went down this wire, and I affixed, and so then I did an armature deform on that wire to this just line of bones, and then I said, okay, this bone on one end, you're stuck to the handle, you follow this handle, the other bone you follow the bike, so that anytime the handle moved, the wire would bend with it. So it's just little things like that that you may run across with animating. Okay, the other thing I'll show you real quick is if I'm going to just delete all this. Actually, no, I'm actually kind of pleased with how this turned out. So let me just do a file new one real quick. This is going to be, so let's say you've got a couple different things happening here, or a couple different pieces. So let's say for whatever reason you have a character that is like this. This is the body. And I should actually be a little more precise than this. And hold on. Okay, this is a terrible example, but let me just walk you through this. So let's say, this character has 2 meshes that we're combining together, and we're not even going to combine it together. Actually, then we do a Control 2, and then we do Control A, Visual Geometry to Mesh. There we go. So Suzanne has a lot of mesh there. Okay, so real quick, let me do a quick armature. So I'm going to go Shift A. I'm going to go armature single bone like this, and make it visible in front like this, and then GZ, move this up, and then tab to edit, E, EZ like this, and then let's do my side view, make sure these are kind of sort of doing something interesting. Okay, like this, and then let's do front, and if I turn on symmetry like this, will it do? No, that's fine. Let's extrude, and I'll just do it again over here without symmetrizing. I know. Okay, so we've got 2 pieces here like this, and I want I want the armature to control both of these. And also, just for good measure, let's say, Suzanne is holding a donut. RX90 like this. My donut. Okay. It's actually simpler than it seems. So like you just select everything. So we say Suzanne's head and the body and the donut. Final active selection is the armature. We can do Control P armature deform with automatic weights, and they'll all be parented to it. So now if I go into pose mode, if I move this, it's moving the mesh in such a strange way. Oh, did I not apply? What's the deal with this mesh? I'm still in pose mode. Oh, goodness. Okay, hold on. So, something happened. Hold on. But let me undo. Let me undeal. Okay, why is this so strange? You may be looking at this. Oh, yeah. I didn't apply my mirror modifier. I thought I had done visual geometry to mesh. Okay, Control A, visual geometry to mesh. There we go. Okay. Make sure you apply your modifiers before you do armature deform. That's key. Keely. Oh, and this isn't here. I want the donut to be right on the hand like that. Okay, now let's do it. Select the body, the head, the thing. Final selection is the armature. It's the active selection. Control P, armature deform with automatic weights. Here we go. Let's see what this did. Now let's go to pose mode. Pose mode. Yes, that seems much more natural. So you can see that now, things are moving as they hopefully should. And so we've got this moving. You can move the hand like this. The head moves together with this. Oh, interesting. So how it did the automatic weights, because that was entirely inside the thing, you can. It was entirely inside Suzanne's head. It's not moving at all with that. Let's see how this works. So yep, the donut is in the hand, etc. Now the other thing that you can do is you could go in here. You could go to object mode. Whoops. Object mode, please. And you could select the object, and you could do weight paint. I believe we talked about weight paint before. And so this is saying that like this is 100% red with which bone? Bone 13, the last bone that we did. It should be blue when I click on any of these other vertex groups. So you could go through and adjust that. So I did notice, however, let me go back in object mode. If I look at Suzanne, let's click on Suzanne and go to weight paint. There were a couple of these in the arm. So like if this is the first bone we made, it's not moving with Suzanne down. Here's bone 01. It's moving a little bit. Bone 02, the rest is moving. Bone 3 would be the one that came off there. 4, you can see the ear is a little bit like lighter blue on bone 4 here. And so like when I was moving that bone, the ear was moving a little bit. And so this is sometimes what happens with automatic weights. So you can just paint this a dark blue again. F to make that bigger, so it doesn't move with it. See anything on bone 5? Yeah, it's still a little lighter blue. For some reason, it's moving with it. So this is how you can go in and adjust a custom armature, just a little bit. Anyway, the other thing I'll say is, let's see. So let's go back to object mode, and let's go to like this. Whoops, no, sorry. Pose mode. I'm going to do A. Oh my gosh, did not mean to do that. Z. Solid mode, please. A to select all. And let's go to pose and clear transform all like this. So it'll set it back to normal. Because I just want to add one more thing. If I go back into edit mode. So let's say you have an object that you don't necessarily want to move with like pose mode. You don't want to have to deal with the that whole thing. Like let's say your character's holding a weapon or a prop or something like that. You can just parent it to a particular bone. So let's say we want this to be a donut in Suzanne's other hand. You can add the constraint on here. Add constraint and child of, and you can say this is going to be a child of the armature. You can select the individual bone. So, this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, bone 8. And then set inverse. And then it's going to follow that bone around without having to be like parented or anything like that. So like it's not going to be, embedded in the armature up here. This can be handy for held things. But it'll still move with the pose. Or will it? Oh, hold on. Oh, it's because it's not bone 8, it's bone 7 that I wanted. So let's go back. Hold on. Object mode. Go back to object constraints like this. It's not bone 8, it's bone 7, please. Set inverse. There we go. Now if we go back and select the armature, we go to pose mode. Now if I move this, yes, it indeed will follow bone 7. And it's a separate thing. Okay. Probably more than you ever needed to know about armatures, and admittedly, this is pretty dull. Okay, I'm gonna revisit my character animation ever so slightly, but because character animation is like pretty tedious, I'm not gonna spend too much time on it. And I'm gonna prep this for render, and we'll go from there. And so I'll give you a couple of tips and suggestions. I talked about the foot sliding thing. Like that's definitely like something that is tough for people. The other thing too, to kind of go for realistic movements of a character trying to move fast is remember that like characters go up in the air. Like when someone's running and going fast, both feet are off the ground for a moment. So this, like right now how I have this set up, it's like a little bit awkward because like ideally, and maybe why don't I just do this? Why don't I just do it? And sometimes it helps to just go one frame at a time. So like just be conscious of where your mouse is, and you can use the arrow keys, but like really the knee kind of juts forward like this. The knee kind of continues to go like this. And so now I'm kind of overriding some of my existing keyframes. And then this really pushes off like that. And then maybe this foot starts to kind of reach out like this. And then really the back leg pushes off pretty far. It'd be like a little bit of a longer stride. But even here, like this foot needs to be like reaching a little bit more forward. So, reference images are helpful. And like this, and this heel needs to come down. Yeah, the foot eventually has to hit the ground, right? And like the arms would really be like really reaching a little bit more. Swinging a little bit more. Whoops. This would be like way back like this, maybe like high elbows. And like you'd start a little bit further up like this. And then they might be like leaning forward a little bit more. So anyway, like I'm already getting sucked in and I don't really want to spend that much time on this. That's how you start to add a little bit more realism and likeness. But it's going through, trying to get the timing right, trying to get the timing feeling okay. And then going in and doing in between keyframes. The other thing that you can do is if you go to pose, like there are some options like in between. If you go to this in betweens menu here, create a suitable breakdown pose on the current time frame. So what does this actually do right now? Oh, and then it's like a slider. Huh. So it must be like, it must take the previous keyframe and the last keyframe. That's actually kind of handy now that I think about it, because you can like sort of adjust. If you go pose, it would be Shift E, I think is what it said. Shift E like this. So you can kind of adjust as you go. Listen, look at me like learning new things. So this would be a good way to like, if you have the toe marked off somewhere. So like I really think I have too many steps here in the middle. So I might even go, if I were to continue with this, I might go back and like remove some of these in betweens, just because I feel like the speed of the character moving across the screen is fine. Like my root movement is good through here, but I just need to have longer strides, and that like when they get to this part, you know, they can flip around a little bit. But, you know, looking at reference image helps for sure with all this stuff. Okay, let's talk about rendering. So first of all, you need to have camera and lights in your scene, because right now there's nothing in here right now. Right now. It's getting late. Okay, so we'll go back to object mode here. Shift A, let's add a camera. So, and don't forget all the fun things that you can do with a camera. That I showed you for the first assignment. Notice how, because we use the sky merge mesh, the default scene settings are a little bit off. So you could do 1280 by 720 or something like that. It's a nice 16:9 format. Let's see. Let me just I want to throw a big area light in here. I'm going to go GZ and move it up, S to scale it up. Let's do render preview just so you can so we can see what we're doing here. Power is going to be, 300 watts or something like that. And let's remind ourselves what the deal is with render engines. So I mentioned I need to change this over to GPU compute. There we go, much faster. So I mentioned that Eevee has undergone a dramatic facelift. That Eevee actually has come a long way. And I realized that I was adding keyframes to my light here. Oh, did I finish what I was going to say about keyframes? The just one thing to be aware of in pose mode, and I think I mentioned this in the Zoom, but like every once in a while I'm animating a character, I'll tap A to kind of see all of my different bits here, and you can kind of. And you open up some of your drop or twirl down menus here. What do they call these drill down menus? And just see what's got keyframes on it. So like, for example, like there are a couple things here that have just the one keyframe, like all the tweak, because I added that one keyframe, I think, right as they're about to go off the cliff. So, you might just delete some of these extra keyframes to make it a little bit tidier. Like delete all these. Oops. Delete all these, just because you never know when an extra keyframe might throw you off with something. And then it's also, you can kind of use it as a reference to see what other things are moving at what time. And then, of course, I recommend that if you need to, go into the graph editor, change some of the easing on some of these things. Like a lot of this probably doesn't need to ease because you're going to end up adding a lot of like little tiny keyframes along the way. But the moral of the story is you just are going to be spending a lot of time on this. Character animations just take time. It's slow. Anyway, I'm talking about animating. So Eevee, the Eevee render engine here on your render properties panel is definitely adequate. They have some new cool like shadow things happening. It does in fact also do ray tracing, which is cool, and that's something new. So you can see when I turn ray tracing on, you can see that there's now light bouncing around to this side. So with ray tracing off, this side's just going to be totally gray. In fact, if I turn the world color to black, you can see that the sides of this are and even with ray tracing off, it's showing some of the light, which is actually kind of cool. But then in my render settings, you can turn ray tracing on, and you can see that there's like some nice light bouncing happen. It's not. I don't believe it's real ray tracing, but max roughness. It's like fakes it pretty well. But Cycles is the like for real ray traced workspace here. Now, if you have a nice graphics card, I encourage you to, if you're going to do Cycles, which you don't have to, you switch it over from CPU to GPU compute, and to enable your graphics card to do some of the processing for you, you have to go to the Edit menu and Preferences and go to System. And at the top here, there's Cycle Render Devices, and you'll be able to see hopefully your graphics card listed in here. CUDA is NVIDIA and processors, and HIP and optics are for AMD graphics cards, if you have one of those. Actually, I don't know if HIP is. I don't know if optics is. I don't know what the difference between those are. But CUDA is a NVIDIA technology, and HIP is the AMD equivalent. Okay, anyway, so now, if you're doing this, if you're doing Cycles, set a sample limit, and your sample limit should be like a number less than 100, maybe even like less than 64. I think pick multiples of 2, not multiples of 2, but like square numbers. Like 64 is a good one, or like I guess 96 is not necessarily square, but anyway, what was I gonna say? 64 is totally fine for this. You can also, and this is the number of samples for every single frame that you're going to render. So you can also set a time limit for frame, but also that may mean that frames will have potentially different amounts of samples done on each frame, because it will just meet the time limit regardless. And hopefully, I'm realizing I'm speaking a little bit out of order, but like a sample is like how many times each pixel gets like calculated, because like there's like variations in how accurately the color of a pixel is determined, and so it's sort of like the more samples it does, the more like accurate it's going to be with the lighting and the materials and stuff like that. So if you have like one sample here, let's do a proof of concept. If we do one sample, let's see what this looks like with one sample. I'm going to do render image. One sample. Oh yeah, and this is it. Okay, and that's no denoise. So this is what it looks like with one sample and no denoising. Now let's turn on denoising and let's see what it does with render and one sample. So it does one sample and then it does a little bit of denoising. So you can see that there's, the shadows are not great, or not as crisp, the like details of it, and maybe this is just because of the size of the render that I did. But now if we change this to be like 64 samples, let's do render image. So it's going to spend a little bit more time trying to get the accurate shadows and lighting and stuff. You can see that, oh yeah, it's like a little bit smoother now. And there's diminishing returns, because now if I set this to be like 128, which is double 64, if my math is right, it doesn't look that much different from 64. In fact, it looks indistinguishable from 64. If you were to do something that's a little bit more complicated, that has a lot more lights, different materials, if you have glass or things like that, or like other shadows and things happening, more samples makes more of a difference. But here, like 64 was like probably even more than enough. So make sure, and so also note the difference between viewport samples and render samples, and then probably turn on denoise. That's helpful, because that'll get rid of all the little bits and stuff. Okay, now rendering an image sequence. So this is hopefully a refresher, but when you render an animation, you have two options. You can render a video file, which is what everybody, I believe, did for assignment 1. Great. The more complicated and the longer your renders are, the more risk there is of like Blender crashing, or your computer crashing, or accidentally getting unplugged, or like whatever, your cat choose the chord and the power goes off or whatever. And so if you're in the middle of rendering a video directly out of Blender and any of those things happen, you've lost that render. The render is done and you'd have to start over. So it's not unheard of in this class for an animation render to take several hours, especially if you're using cycles. You don't have to use cycles, but like some people just like, myself included, I just need that like little extra quality out of the cycles render. I'm kind of addicted to it, but I'm actually very interested to explore some of the new things that Eevee is doing. But anyway, so the safer method is to render an image sequence. So rather than taking all the frames and then combining them into a video file immediately, it saves each frame as an image. An individual image that then you later stitch together on your own. So if you get to frame, 90 out of 100 and your computer crashes, you only have to do those last 10 again. And you'll save a little bit of heart. The 90 frames that rendered as images, you've already got those images. They've already been rendered. A couple other advantages to this would be like, let's say you're in the lab at Hennepin Tech in Brooklyn Park, and there's nobody in there, and you've got a big animation to do. You just take your Blender file and open it up on 4 machines, and you say like, okay, first 25 frames you render on this machine. Next 25 frames you render on a different computer. The third set of 25 frames on this one. The last set of 25 frames are on that one. And then you're done in a quarter of the time because you farmed out your rendering to several machines. Last advantage is like, let's say you only need to change one part of your animation. Like you say like, oh, actually, you know what? I wanted him to jump through a manhole instead of a rabbit hole. Bad example. Or let's say, oh, actually, I just wanted to change the camera angle on this one shot. So all you need to do is render those like 30 frames where you're using that camera shot and just replace those in your image sequence rather than having to re-render the whole thing again. So let's just briefly talk about how you do that. Man, I did actually fill 52 minutes. A lot of it was pretty dull. The whole armature thing, man, snooze. Hopefully you skipped it. I do think that some of you needed that, though. I think some of you were looking for some like advice on like how to armature a thing for animation. Okay, an image sequence. So we're on our render properties. We've got cycles selected. I'm even going to do 48 samples. Then I'm going to go to output properties. So before I said, yep, do a file format, choose FFmpeg video, do encoding, do MPEG-4, do medium quality, whatever. Now we're gonna rather than a file format movie, we're doing image, and we're gonna do a PNG. I pretty much always recommend that you do PNG. Color, black and white. Red, green, blue, or red, green, blue, alpha. So this, you would do RGBA if you're doing something that has a transparent background. Side note, if you're wanting to do that, it's in your render previews and it's under film. And it's transparent, so you enable transparent like that. So you can see when I check transparent, my background changes to this checker background. That means it's transparent. Hopefully you can identify that if you've been in other image editing programs. But I'm just going to do the black background like that. So I'm going to do turn transparent off. And then when I go to output properties, I'm not going to do RGBA because there's no alpha or transparency. I'm just going to do RGB. 8-bit color depth is fine. And I'm going to do 0% compression. Choose your output. Choose where this is going to go. So you can see like I have an image sequence from something from a mystery project in here. What do you think this is? This is going to be a surprise. Look at this C, and it's in this temp folder. Oh, okay. It's actually it's a preview of your next assignment. Never mind. So I'm gonna find my Hennepin Tech folder. It's somewhere in here. Fall 24 animation. This is gonna be new folder here. This is gonna be my parkour. Parkour. Render 1. And like you can have folders within folders of renders, stuff like that, whatever. And I'm also going to label this, you know, Nolan's PK for parkour. And I'm going to accept it. And I don't need 00, like, I think I can just do Nolan PK like that, and then it'll save file extensions. Okay, and then, let's see how this goes. So I'm going to go render, and then render animation. How fast do you think this will go? Oh, you know what? And actually, I'm going to stop because I only want to get a certain number of frames. That's the other thing to double check here. I don't need all 160 frames. And you know what? I should just have my camera move. Hold on. Okay, camera. Let me go back to my timeline here. Camera position. Okay, you're good here. And then as this moves down, actually right. Well, let's just see. Let me move this down. Location Z. Whoops. And then. Why didn't you animate? Oh, that's my annotations. Bum, bum, bum. And then, okay, here is where that needs to be. And then here it needs to go up like this. And then, okay, so automatically keyed it. Cool. Okay. So the 89 is my last frame. That's what I was trying to do. Okay. Frame range is going to be 0 to 89 like that. Okay. Now, save. Save it before you render. Save. Do a save. Control S. Render animation. Here we go. How long is it going to take to render 89 frames? Oh, it's a painful amount. Okay. So I don't want to wait for this because I am tired and I need to go to bed. So I'm going to just close this real quick, switch it over to Eevee, and just make sure everything else looks good. RGB, PNG, there we go. Okay, render animation. This should go a lot faster. 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, Eevee to the rescue. See, and I'm not even going to pause while it does this because it's happening so fast. Okay, and then the final step is going to be you can use the Blender sequencer to stitch them all together once you have all of your images in sequence. The other thing too is if you're an After Effects user, you can what can you do? You can import an image sequence directly into After Effects. I'm not sure about Photoshop, or I'm not sure about Premiere, but I do know you can do it in After Effects. So what you do is you like just hit Control I to import, and then you select the first image in the sequence, and then there's a little checkbox that says image sequence, and should automatically check it, and then it's good to go. It treats it just like a video file. This is something that's what I actually usually do, is I'll render something out of Blender as an image sequence with transparency. I'll bring it into After Effects, and then I'll just make a background, like a simple background in After Effects or something like that. Okay, head of attack, Fall 24, animation, parkour render 1. Here's my image sequence. It's a bunch of images of everything happening. Okay, final step then, if you can do it in After Effects or something like that, but I'll show you how to do it in Blender. I'm going to change this window down here to be, rather than the timeline, I'm going to change this to be video sequencer. And where am I? I'm going to go back. I'm going to go to frame 0 like this, and I'm going to hit the add menu. I'm going to say image/sequence, and I'll find my week 1 render. And let's see. I want to like sort this correctly. I want to sort it by the name. Because like if I do date modified, it's actually a little bit out of order. You can see it goes 0, 2, 1, 4, 3, 6, 5. So I'm going to sort it by name. That way it's working right. And then I'm going to select, I'm going to just double check. I don't know why it does this here, but I want to start with frame 0 and end with frame 89. I'm going to type it in. And I'm going to whoops. It's like the first one. And then I'm going to hold down the shift key. Why is this giving me such a hard time? Maybe I need a mouse wheel. And then shift and hold the last one. And then I'm going to do add image strip. I think that did it. Okay, add image strip. Here we go. And so I'm still seeing this here. So actually what I need to do is, if you want to be able to see it, you can change this to, is it image editor, actually, how we see it? And then, no, how do we do this? Oh, actually, this also just needs to be a video sequencer, but then you change this to be a preview. There we go. So this will show you the preview of all of it stitched together. Oh. And then, so there it's all there. This, and so like you could just blend it for video editing if you really wanted to. You know, you've got like different layers and stuff like that. And then you can just go through and do the same thing here with your render output, but then you just change this to your thing. You can go PNG, FF, MPEG video, you know, RGB, whatever, change this to MP4, codec H.264, good quality, whatever, encoding, you know, output quality. Let's do like high quality, how about? And then you just do it again. Make sure you're like saving this in the right spot. I'm going to go up one, and this is going to be Nolan PK. I'm just going to make a video file, and I'll do render animation. And this should be even faster because it doesn't actually have to render the 3D scene. It's just slapping together all the images into a sequence or into a video file. And so now if I go to Fall 24, animation, Nolan PK, there it is. There it is. Did it. So here's what you got. Finish your parkour assignment. Render out an animation. So like, don't be afraid, don't be shy, and don't be afraid to just spend some time on the keyframes. You may need to delete some keyframes. You may need to adjust your timing a little bit. It's tedious, and this is like the thing I need you to learn about character animation is that it just takes time. And use some reference materials. So submit your Blender file, please, and an animation before next week. And then we'll move on to the next thing, which would be face animations. Okay. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.